All right, everyone, thanks for joining us today. And I brought on an expert for front desk and overall sales training, Jerry Durham here. I've known Jerry for past couple months, and we met before COVID period, and he's got a lot of great content. We see eye to eye, and I've learned a lot of things from him. He's got a ton of great content in his Facebook group, and I wanted to bring him on here as one of the experts to talk about front desk training, as well as being able to allow the sales process that you have for your physical therapy, chiropractic, overall healthcare clinic, and being able to make sure that your front desk are trained optimally so that they're able to generate money for you, retain patients, and ultimately be advocates for your business and growth. So thanks for joining us. Jerry, tell us a little bit about you, just for the people who aren't familiar with you right now.
Sure. I've been a physio, so I'm in the States. And by the way, spent a fair amount of time in Canada speaking to physios at a couple different events, and have a pretty wide network, meaning people I know in Canada, chiros, massage, and physio. So just for context there, I have been a physio in the US for, I think I'm in my 26th year, which is just too much for me to handle. But I had my own business for 19, and I say my own business, but for the first 10, it probably wasn't a business. And I had multi-sites and multiple employees, and I had set up a practice, a clinic, an office based on just basically getting people scheduled based on their insurance and how much their insurance would pay. And then 10 years in, literally, with multiple sites and multiple people, dropped all the insurance contracts. And what that means, basically, for those of you outside of the US, that means I went to more of a cash-based model overnight. And this was 11 years ago. So it just was nowhere to be found. And long story short, I was forced, because I couldn't find the answers, to go find business mentors, business books, entrepreneurs organization, which I know is a lot in Canada, and got my business training and learned about the importance of the sales process. Well, actually, let's bump it up one. Learned about the importance of understanding your client life cycle, of which I then, once I learned about that, understood the importance of the sales process, and actually realized that 99.9% of healthcare has totally disregarded, has totally tossed out, has totally misunderstood, undervalued the most important key in that process, and that's our front desk. And for lack of a better term, we call it a front desk. You and I were talking about the dual role of this, Brad, but we call it the front desk. And the front desk is a huge missing component in your business, and that's why my business continued to thrive and strive. And I've been out of it now for a few years, but it continued to thrive and strive because we did one thing. We focused in on our client, customer, patient, and then understood the role of the front desk. That's what caused us to be successful. Had nothing to do with the providers, had nothing to do with billing, had nothing to do with the money we were collecting, had all to do with that front desk and where they fit into the patient life cycle.
And I think that's super, super important. One of the things that I've really learned in my business. So tell me a little bit about when you first discovered that process about understanding that the life cycle of the patient was super important and how it tied into the front desk.
Yeah, I love this, because this really, always go back, joining EO was a big one, but there's about 4 to 5 tipping points in my career that are just these huge points where I could point out where big things happen. And what you just described was one of them. We had a billing issue in my company. And a billing issue in the States means basically someone has completed their course of care, they were happy, and then they get a bill, right? And they get a bill for an amount of money they weren't expecting. That is a billing issue, plain and simple. And this dependence on third-party payers in the States and the way we manage the expectations around third-party payers leads to a lot of billing problems. So we had a billing problem. And mind you, this was after we'd changed our model, because we were still able to bill insurance. So we spent about 8 months, time, money, and energy in the billing department trying to solve our billing problem. At the same time, I was starting to understand and learn more about this patient life cycle. So over this 8 months, we were dealing with this billing problem. I was learning more and more from my colleagues, my mentors, about client lifecycle and patient lifecycle. We get to the end of it all, and it didn't change. So we spent 8 months, all this money, all this time and energy, thinking it was a billing problem. So I took a step back, and I just fortunately had been doing that work and said, look, we got to look at this differently. And I approached it from an idea of what is going. So here's the result. The result is a pissed off customer holding a bill. I said, how did they get there? And that was through looking through the life cycle. And I went, wait a minute. And I walked it back. I was like, we don't have a billing issue. We have an expectations issue. And I was like, I traced that all the way back to when we give people their price during the first phone call. So we were talking about an issue that was happening 4, 5, 6 months after people initially called our clinic. And I'm like, that could have been prevented 6 months ago. So that was the first big step. So we changed the incoming call script to deal with this billing problem conversation. The billing problems disappeared. 3 months, right? Over 3 months, disappeared. So I would like to say it was proven, because all we changed was the front end phone conversation about what you should expect from your insurance. The back end billing problem disappeared. Here's another huge thing. The cascade started, Brad, and I know you can appreciate this. I'm looking at my business metrics 3 months later after we started this, and I'm like, whoa, timeout. Our cancel rate had gone from 13% to about 6%. And I'm like, why did that happen? We hadn't changed anything anywhere in the practice but the front end. And then all of a sudden I realized we were managing expectations for people better. So when they were arriving, they knew what to expect. People were staying. People were paying their bill. People weren't pissed. And it was all because of this front end conversation. And again, the magic of looking at that patient life cycle and going, where is this problem occurring? Where can I impact this problem the biggest? So the billing problem I solved. The cancel thing I stumbled into and realized the cancel problem was solved the same way we managed the billing problem. We managed and set expectations better.
I love it. I think that's a huge component. Communication, obviously, we know is a huge, huge thing, especially with managing expectations and whatnot. Do you have specific things that you used or communicated to patients in order for them to understand the expectations and be able to overcome some of those things?
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to take this back one step further because I don't want people to start building a story in their mind. As Brad and I work through this conversation together, you're going to start to believe that the front end becomes this behemoth in your business and it overtakes everything. The phone calls take longer, the process takes longer, and all this stuff, and I have to spend more money. And I'm going to tell you, get that out of your mind right now. I do secret callers. I listen to recorded calls every day from clinics I'm working with. The amount of shit, I think I can say shit. I think the Canadians will be okay with shit. The amount of shit I hear on these first phone calls, 8-minute phone calls, 9-minute phone calls, 10-minute phone calls, 12-minute phone calls. And we get to the end of the phone call and they don't do anything I just told you. And when I tell people I can help them and I tell them about all this stuff, they're always like, oh, those phone calls are going to be long. I'm like, have you ever listened to one of your phone calls? So what I want you to do, let's back this up. I want you to understand that this whole process is about efficiency. How can I get what I need during this phone call, during this process, to set the patient and the provider up for success? And it is not longer phone calls, because the people who you need to get off the phone, you get off the phone. Then people who need to be on the phone are on the phone for a reason. I see these posts all the time. Oh, I kept someone on the phone for 20 minutes. I'm like, so what? Did they complete a plan of care? Did they arrive, right? There has to be a goal. So it's about efficiency. So based on what you just asked, Brad, I think it was important, because what I came up with, let me back up again. What I came up with was after I answered. So when I was going through this process, I actually sat and answered. I was the voice of our company. I was the sales guy in the back, taking all the new patient incoming calls for a year. So I answered about 1,000 new patient incoming calls in my company in a year. So the process that we're talking about, I came by because I did it poorly. parts I did well, parts I did poorly. I made a lot of mistakes. I asked a lot of better questions, and was able to come together with a process and build out a process that we could then hire someone with. So I actually have a 10-point checklist that I go through, Brad. And two of the things in there, the two most important things about that 10-point checklist, there's two of the most important things. Understanding on the first phone call the desired outcome for that person, and understanding what they expect of the services that you offer are the two most important things you can learn on the first phone call. The understanding their desired outcome. Everybody says get their goals. If you've ever secret called clinics and you secret call enough, getting someone's goals, it sounds, I'm going to tell you right now, if I call and I ask Brad, or Brad wants to schedule physio with me, and I say, so Brad, what are your goals? There is no context. The way people manage this, there's no context for it. It is such an awkward question. So that's why I say I want to start to build a relationship with Brad and find out what do you need from us? What do you want from us, Brad? Far better way to ask for someone's goals. Once I have that, I can solve all of Brad's problems on the face of the earth, right? All of a sudden, I'm not a clinic who just treats low back pain patients. I'm a clinic who can get Brad back to CrossFit and get rid of his morning pain. So getting those goals are number one. And then number two is finding out, so Brad, what do you believe, right? Or what do you expect to help you? What are you looking for, right? This is research proven. It's in the JOSPT. It's in our US journals. And by the way, I work with a couple of researchers out of Canada too on this, managing and setting expectations and building trust. So I have to find out what he expects, and I have to find out that big, I want to know. And I've never told anybody get someone's goals, or maybe you'll hear it in my old podcast. It's get their desired outcome. What do you want from this? It's about wants, not needs. So I built the 10-point checklist, and then I train people on how to get that information, how to ask the question in the manner, instead of going, so Brad, what are your goals, right? I asked Brad, what is his story? I listened to his story and I repeat back to him what he heard, right? And within that story, I should be able to get his goals and a lot more things. And so that relationship, the trust, the fear, doubt, and uncertainty, right? All that good stuff happens.
Yeah,
I get excited about this stuff, Brian.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Because it's so much different. And one thing I always did was being in the gym and clinic areas. I called different gyms and clinics, and it's really not kind of like a consultative selling process. It's more like benefit sell. Let's get you booked in, and it feels like an arm wrestling. Like, hey, I've got to win. I got to get this person on the schedule because that's the way that business is. And I think you touched on one thing, and I be curious to get your opinion. Is like, we as practitioners and we as even from front desk and administrators and whatnot, we're not selling a service, we're selling a solution. And I think that's a really key component that I've really realized over the years, because just like you said, people need context, and people are people. They're not robots. Yeah, they've got shoulder pain, but they're limited from doing something. What is it that they need to get back? When you shift that conversation, I find that you end up becoming a little more preeminent with that person, just because no one else asked that. And there was one time I literally, with one of my sales staff, I sat and we called all afternoon to gyms and clinics, like just a bunch of different places. And not one person really asked me even just, how are you? Which I always thought was really strange. I think we called maybe 50 or 60 places, and it was not one person said, hey, how are you doing? Like, what, like actually trying to understand about me. It's very much about information. Here you go. Let's get you booked in. And very transactional based. So, I think that's a huge component. What are your thoughts on that?
You and I agree on this. I see you sharing that all the time, and I love it because people will, right, go to anybody's website, go to a physio website, and you can see what they're going to sell you, right? Whatever pops up first is what they're going to sell you when you call, right? You see the Alter G, you see treatment techniques. My other favorite thing is to pull up a physio website, and the first thing you see is pictures of the physios. I'm like, so what, right? Back to, it's got to be about me. So this is simple enough, right? This is basic psychology. This is basic selling. This is basic marketing. This is basic business. This is basic therapeutic alliance. It's got to be about me, the person calling in. And what Brad just described in that transactional world is all about you. I have this thing I call the you versus me test on the first phone call, right? And I actually, when I do secret callers, I have a booklet where I track my secret calls. And I put a line down the middle of the page and I write you, meaning the business, or me, the patient. And at the end of it, I go through and look at each question, because I write down every question that was asked of me. And I look down, is that question focused on me or you? 99.999% of the time, the majority, and by majority, I mean all but one or two check marks, are on the you side. And so making that connection is simple, and there's the Starbucks story about the reason they yell out your name on the cup, right? They could just place it down and you could walk up and find the cup with your name on it, but it wouldn't be the same because they yell it out. Hey, Jerry, your drink's ready. And you're like, sweet, right? They yell out your name for a fucking reason. And if Starbucks gets it, I don't understand why healthcare doesn't get it, right? So the name thing is all about you, right? And so when I do these secret callers, back to Brad's point, is it's always transactional. It's business. It's get on the phone, get off the phone. I had someone schedule me in like a minute 49 the other day. And I'm like, why am I going to, by the way, on the secret callers, I always schedule 2 weeks out. So I'm not messing up anybody's schedule, and I immediately let them know, right? I don't take a slot from tomorrow. But so if I schedule 2 weeks out and you put me on the schedule, by the way, you put me on the schedule, in a minute 49, you schedule me for physical therapy at 10:30 on Thursday, and you don't tell me my provider's name, why would I not call around? And then the first place that answers the phone, like Brad describes, or Jerry, tell me what's going on. Oh, me? Yeah. All of a sudden, and then I schedule with you and I call the other place back and I cancel, or I just no show, right? And so it's always funny because those first visit eval no shows, fortunately, by the time we dialed this process in, my first visit, by the time someone was confirmed for their first visit, they showed up because of the process we put in place. So my first visit arrival rate was damn near 100%. Now, my conversion rate was not 100%, so don't get me wrong here, but we did all the work that once someone was click confirmed on the schedule, they were showing up and they were going to complete a plan of care. That's the sales process. That's this mindset. So that we took care of people and made sure that we answered 5 things about all these people, right? So by the time their appointment time came, they knew everything they needed to know, and it was always about them.
I think that's awesome, because that's what a lot of people, forget, is they will book someone out 2 weeks and spend, 2 minutes booking them. And then a lot of the time when I actually go out and test it, people don't even do follow-up calls. They don't have emails, anything. And, there's a lot of things that could go on. People are wondering, what's this going to be like? Can I afford this? Do I like this person? Like, is this going to hurt? Like, they go through all of these types of things. So I think that kind of brings us to the next point to sort of get into the details with, is actually talking about what is a patient life cycle. I call it a patient success journey, same kind of concept. Like, what is it and how do we really apply it, and what aspect the front desk plays that role in being able to make sure that people show up and they also feel like VIP celebrities, and they're going to fulfill a plan of care. And then you don't have to worry about getting tons of new patients because you've got a lead. So tell me like a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I want to repeat the last thing you said. The key to all this, the key to this whole session right here that Brad and I are talking about, it's about getting people on the schedule who are the right fit, who will complete a plan of care. And I use this example all the time, and I'm just going to use made up numbers. If you have 100 slots to fill in the month of July, you basically have 2 options. You can put 10 brand new people on the schedule and schedule them all out for 10 visits, or you can schedule 100 brand new patients. Now, that might sound a little extreme to you, but I want you to hear 2 things. That 10 people should equal the same, right? Mm-hmm. So the goal is to get people on the schedule who will arrive, pay, stay, and do your marketing with you. That's why That's why when you who are watching this and listening to this are telling your front desk to get people scheduled, you're doing the second thing. Because every time someone drops off, you've told them all that matters is fill that slot. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Why is that slot empty? Why did that person cancel? Why do we have a fucking wait list? Right? A wait list, forget that. We can go into that some other time. But I want you to remember what the question Brad asked. The point of this is if I want 100 visits and my average visits per case, I think you guys call it PVA, is 10, then I need 10 people next month, not 50 to give me 2 visits. And by the way, the work and the energy to schedule 100 new patients versus 10 new patients who just keep their appointments and who arrive and pay their copay and do their thing and leave and show up. The amount, this is the thing, this patient life cycle isn't just about getting people right through it. It's about business success. So what had happened in my world, right, was and you see this with everybody, right? Everybody focuses on the provider interaction. So you could say, well, we care about retention, right? And I say, well, who owns retention? Well, the providers do. Cool. So tell me what that means. And all they talk about is this little world right here. And I'm like, but the patient was called 2 weeks ago. Nobody contacted them or did anything for 2 weeks. And they showed up and they were in the waiting room. Then they met their provider and they were with that provider for 60 minutes and then they left again. And they did that 10 times. I go, but they were with your, right? But they were with your business for 4 months. I was like, all the interactions with the front desk, all the interactions outside of the clinic, all the interactions after they're done, the emails they receive, the phone calls, the touch points, right? All those are your patient life cycle. So you take the patient life cycle. The mindset of this is if Brad is a brand new patient, I put it in. So my patient life cycle is 4 phases. And phase 1 is the marketing phase, the attraction phase. So Brad sees my website. Brad has low back pain. He sees my website. He has started in my patient life cycle. Brad chooses to call the clinic. That was phase 1. He is now entering phase 2 of the life cycle. Brad arrives and meets the provider. He's now entering phase 3. Brad finishes a course of care, high fives, and goes on his post-course of care. He's now starting phase 4. And the patient life cycle is a circle. And the patient life cycle is every touch point, every interaction, every piece of communication that your potential client, because don't forget, they're not a real client. They're not a paying customer until they arrive. So your potential patient and or client until re-engagement, I call it. Patient life cycle is a circle. And re-engagement could be someone calling me, telling me that Brad sent them. It could be Brad's doctor sending someone because Brad went back. So re-engagement is a broad term, but it's all the way from attraction to re-engagement. And it's a circle. And it's a circle because I don't want people to lose sight that this is never ending. It keeps feeding itself. That's the patient life cycle. And then the role, back to what you asked about the front desk. Well, the sooner you can build trust with people, the sooner you can decrease fear, doubt, and uncertainty, the better and more likely they will arrive, pay, stay, and do your marketing with you. I have this great analogy. What happens right now with people who schedule, who don't understand the patient life cycle, Brad calls. Brad gets put on the schedule. The phone's hung up. Brad's trust level with the company is about here. Brad waits. This is when he's going to meet his provider. Brad goes like this for 2 weeks, meets his provider, and now we put on Brad in 1 hour to do all those things I said earlier. Build trust, build an alliance, decrease fear, doubt, and uncertainty, take him through an evaluation, sell a plan of care, and get him scheduled out. We expect him to just go from 0 to 100% trust in 60 minutes. If you understand your patient's life cycle and your front desk role, I call it the trust trajectory. So this, from the moment they're on the phone to the moment they meet Brad, I want the trust level going up, up, up. So by the time they meet Brad, they're already bought in. Brad just, I'm like, just don't fuck it up, Brad, right? Because we built all this trust over those 2 weeks. Phone calls, emails, videos, right? Building trust. all those are touch points and interactions. And if we understand the patient life cycle, we understand that we now have 2 weeks of this awesome, everybody says, wow, 2 weeks, that's so long. I'm like, fuck, we're going to leverage this. So they're going to buy their plan of care before they even meet Brad. That's the understanding of this patient life cycle.
And what kind of things do you find are keys? Like if you had someone on the schedule for 2 weeks and they are going to come in, what kind of keys do you think, from the front desk, as well as like follow-ups in order to build value, that would be, helpful for someone listening to this to be able to implement if they don't already.
So yeah, perfect. So let's go back. I talked about so everything's connected. So I talked about that 10-point checklist earlier. This is where you really put it into work, right? This is where that thing earns its keep. So on that 10-point checklist, remember, Brad doesn't arrive for 2 weeks. I have his desired outcomes, and we're going to go with the get back to CrossFit and get rid of morning pain in his low back. I have his desired outcomes. Brad also knows, and this is baffling the number of people that will not tell me, Brad knows that he is scheduled with an expert, and that expert's name, and let's just say in Canada, they're not doctors, that's fine. That expert's name is Bill Smith. Bill Smith is going to be your physio, Brad. And the reason you're going to see Bill Smith is he's treated a lot of people and helped them get back to CrossFit and get rid of that morning pain. So on that 10-point checklist, remember, Brad hasn't even arrived yet. On that 10-point checklist, I have Brad's goals. I know who his expert is. I've sold his expert to him. I've told him that his expert will give him a diagnosis and give him a plan to get back to CrossFit, AKA a plan of care. So Brad already knows what to expect on day one. So when I send the welcome email, so I send a welcome email immediately, let's say within 5 hours, 6 hours, it's going to mention everything again. It's going to mention Brad's goals. It's going to mention his expert, Bill Smith. It's going to mention how Bill has helped other people just like Brad. It's also going to give him maybe a screenshot or a map to the clinic. We want to take away all fear, doubt, and uncertainty. We're going to use this 2 weeks to chip away at all the fear, doubt, and uncertainty. And every time we chip away at fear, doubt, and uncertainty, the trust goes up. Remember the difference between this and this. So a welcome email. My favorite one is the second one. And by the way, you and I both know Brad, so I'll just say this out loud. The best way to get someone to open an email is tell them it's coming. And by the way, if you tell them, here we go again. If you tell them the email is 100% for them, they will open it 100% of the time. So I tell Brad, you're going to get 2 emails. I need you to open both of them. The first one is coming this afternoon. It'll be in your inbox by 5 o'clock, and then I deliver it earlier. And I tell them what's going to be in there. Maybe some paperwork, maybe the directions. Also, there's going to be an appointment reminder. The name of your physio, Bill Smith, will be in there. So I tell them, I say, and then Brad, tomorrow at around noon, you're going to get the email you really need to open. It is going to be an introduction. It is going to be an introduction to your physiotherapist, Bill Smith. And they actually get a video. And it's generic and it's only shot one time. Don't get me wrong, it's not shot every time, but you can script this out. And then Brad gets to meet his expert by face. And this expert maybe gives him a tour of the clinic, shows him all this fear, doubt, and uncertainty. Where's the waiting room? I wonder if they have private treatment rooms. How is this going to work? He walks him by the front desk. All this fear, doubt, and uncertainty goes down. Then after that, I would do a follow-up phone call with the front desk. Remember, in my world, the voice of the company was the person who got them to arrive. When Brad arrives, he is not going to see the person he was talking to. That's when they meet the voice of the company. The welcome call, not appointment reminder, the welcome call comes from the voice of the company who introduces themselves by name, who says that they are now the go-to. I know Jerry set you up. I'm your go-to now.
And that's the front desk person. The reception area.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that is how I leverage the fuck out of if I can say fuck, out of that phase of the patient life cycle. And that right there, let's face it, people, and I will say this out loud, and I'm going to give a range. Your front desk is making anywhere from $10 to $20 an hour. I just told you a way to leverage someone completing a plan, and I will guarantee this. I will guarantee it. Your physio in the States are making God knows what, 50, $60 an hour. You cannot get the same ROI. So when someone comes in and completes a plan of care, and you look at the work the front desk did and the work the provider did, the ROI on your front desk is far greater than your provider. And I'm going to tell you, your front desk has greater impact because they're setting them up for success. Because I'm going to tell you this, those first visit, second, third visit drop-offs are people who just are still a little unsure. You need to manage that uncertainty during that period before. Whether it's 24 hours or 2 weeks, you need to manage that uncertainty and set Brad up for success. So moving that sales process further upstream is far more valuable than there's no training that exists today for a provider that can return the ROI of training your front desk in this process.
I think that's huge because if you don't have someone showing up for your appointment, then the provider or practitioner can't do anything anyway. So one thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of get into the roles is sometimes I don't want people to think, oh, it sounds so complicated and I got to have all these crazy systems and everything. Well, and some of the other stuff that we'll be going through in these interviews, we'll be talking about, you leverage technology and things like Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, and so on to actually automate a lot of these processes. So the front desk could get a notifier saying, hey, do this, or you can automate that email so it goes out right away. You don't have to kind of worry about that. So I don't want people to use that as an excuse to say, hey, it's too overwhelming or whatever. We totally got that kind of covered.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, even that video you do, every provider does one video, by the way, and you script it so it seems just close enough. It's just generic enough and just close enough that that person, if they're by the way, you and I both know this is no different than contextual effects. Some people call it placebo. If I tell you you're getting a video from your expert for you, then you're going to listen to it like it's for you.
Yeah, that's huge.
And you only shot it once. Yeah, and it's all automated.
Exactly. So that way, I just want to clear that up because I don't want people to say,
yeah,
oh,
that's
this
a great
takes
point.
a lot of time. It's
well, just like the first phone call, everybody thinks it's going to be longer. And I'm like, no. And just like this stuff, no, it's automated.
Exactly. And the more skilled people are, the more efficient they are, they're going to be able to actually spend less time and be able to triage people because you've shifted their focus to.
You are correct. This is what's so important. I want to say this real quick before we move on. There is I shared this on my Facebook Live this week, and you and I just talked about this, Brad. There is a dual role of your front desk that you don't understand. They are a salesperson and they are an admin person. Brad uses some different terms. I like admin because it's kind of a catch-all. Yet when you sit everybody at the front desk and make them all admin people, then they're right. It's multitasking. They kind of do okay on the sales job, but not really good. And then really the admin stuff falls through the cracks too. Let the admin people focus on the admin stuff. Let the sales people focus on the sales stuff. That alone is your biggest takeaway. And all you have to do, you go to your front desk, tell them to gather up and write out all the tasks they have to do daily, weekly, monthly. And look at that list and then ask them, this is my second favorite follow-up. So who does all this? And if they go, we all do, that's you don't understand the role. That's the first thing I do with businesses when I go in. I want all the tasks and I want to know who's responsible. Well, all the front desk people are responsible for all these. And then I say, so you don't understand that they're actually their biggest asset to the company is their sales role.
Yeah, which basically means that nobody's really accountable to anything for most time.
Yeah, they're kind of right. Because by the way, secret caller wise, I tell people, I wish I had a time machine. I can tell you when a secret caller, when I rang, because remember, I'm saying, hi, I'm Jerry. I have low back pain. I want to get scheduled. I can tell you when they were in the middle of something else and did not want that phone to ring. Whereas if you understand the sales role, the person in the back is waiting for the phone to ring, not hoping it doesn't ring. That's important. I worked the front desk out front. I did the sales stuff. I've worked it all. It's far greater important than anybody can imagine on here. And the leverage there is just insane. And people keep hiring and buying shit. I'm like, back up, get your front desk trained and make some real money and then see if you still want to do that other shit.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing that kind of what we talked a little bit about before and over the past little bit is really clearly defining the roles and for who the front desk is. So like a little bit about my experiences, I struggled a lot with hiring as one of the biggest challenges that I had. I had to really look outside the industry, and I had looked at some food service based industry people in order to help kind of bridge that gap a bit. And one thing that I really realized was having clear expectations and realizing that the front desk, there's some people who are going to be really good at what I refer to as the admin or retention base. Their goal is focused on creating an amazing experience and making sure people show up, they're happy, that they want to buy other base services, and being aware of it, just, how we can best help them, getting referrals, calling them by name, sending them cards for on their birthdays and that type of stuff. And then you've got other people who are more sales dominant. So like one guy that I ended up hiring was someone who sold cell phones and worked in call centers before because, he didn't really know a ton about therapy, but he didn't really necessarily need it. But he would be in the back and he'd be calling and whatnot. So I think it's really important to be able to delineate those roles. Or if you've only got one admin, really make sure that that admin knows exactly what their metrics are and that what they're responsible for. And ideally, you can have the right hire for someone who is kind of dynamic in that role. But it will pay you back significantly less stress as an owner, because then you don't have to deal with people quitting or upset that they can't hit targets or whatever it is. And ultimately, you're making money because someone's actually able to bring people in and get them on the schedule and leveraging what their skill sets are like. So, tell me like a little bit about that process. We talked a little bit.
Dead on, dude. All I can say is, yes, I agree. Cause that's exactly, you and I were talking, Brad started to share before we hit record about how he had set his office up, right? The salesperson in the back, he calls them, what do you call the non-sales people? You call them the retention?
I just call them retention specialists.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So I used to call, I delineated it by calling the person in the back who was answering the phone the voice of the company. And then I called the people at the front desk the face of the company, and who did exactly, I expected them to do exactly what Brad said. So coincidentally, Brad and I have known each other for maybe 6-8 months max. We both had set our practices up exactly the same, with this same mindset of understanding our patient's life cycle, and then understanding the experience we wanted to create, which then again, let's double back, helps you to better understand what is the true role of your front desk. By the way, I will also argue nobody argues more for taking work off the providers than me. All the business owners I work with, they want to blame the providers for cancels, for drop-offs. I'm like, how do you know it's your providers? Mm-hmm. How do you know the front desk didn't manage expectations or set them properly? How do you know it wasn't because they got a surprise insurance bill, right? All this stuff. So
most of the time people don't even track. So they don't even.
Right. So they don't track. By the way, you want to learn about some, I already told you some of the questions I asked to learn about people's practices really quick, but the number one question is just when someone starts talking about their physio business or any business, chiro business, dental business, just say, so what's your drop-off rate? And if they don't know it, that tells you everything you need to know about that practice. Because, by the way, if you understand the drop-off rate, you understand that the front desk plays a role in drop-offs and the provider plays a role in drop-offs. And so it's not anyone's responsibility. It's really a business metric. What I realized when I mapped out the patient life cycle, some of the KPIs, key performance indicators I had assigned to people were just wrong. By the way, and most of your people aren't going to like hearing this, but visits is a horrible business metric. So, and
we'll break that down a little bit for people.
Well, so
get out of shock.
Yeah. So
same with new patients on schedules or new bookings, right?
So execution, right? By the way, this is coming straight out of this book for anybody who's 4 disciplines of execution. I actually got to hear this guy speak, and I'm making my second pass through this book. When you understand your patient's life cycle, you understand who you can serve best. When you understand who you can serve best, you understand what is the ultimate team metric. And this is funny too, because you ask people, so what's your ultimate business metrics? It's like revenue. I'm like, good luck getting your team behind that. It can't be. It can't be. And by the way, revenue's really a trailing, right? It's, is it money today? Is it money tomorrow? Right?
It's kind of a result from activities.
Yeah. So a completed plan of care. A completed plan of care, I can draw out everybody's responsibility in the company for delivering a completed plan of care, including the front desk. And I'm just going to leave it at this. If you're sitting across from someone you want to hire and you want them to help you grow your company, and you want to tell them how important they are to your business, and then you tell them their primary role is just get people scheduled. Now you're sitting across from that same person and you say, look, here at ABC Physio, your role is very important. Your role is setting people up for success. When people get better, you played a role in that. When people don't get better, you played a role in that. And the ultimate metric of success here at ABC Physio is a completed plan of care. And your role at the front desk, by the way, I use my patient life cycle during the interviews. I show people where they fit. And my front desk is the majority. I color code my patient life cycle. My front desk is the majority of the patient life cycle. So if you just visually, there you are, I'm just a front desk person. I'm like, by the way, what do you notice? All that red? I'm like, that's your role in the company. That's the role you play in a completed plan of care. So again, if I can get them to understand they play a bigger part, then it's not just getting people scheduled. It's getting people who will arrive, pay, because if people don't know what the fuck it costs them, they're never going to complete a plan of care. They're going to drop off. Stay, right? Complete a plan of care, and then do our marketing with us. That's the referral part of the whole system. So again, taking this patient life cycle, understanding the roles, understanding the metric of success for the business is what will grow your business pretty damn quickly. I'm not even sure if I answered your question, dude, but that's what seemed to fit there.
I think those are really two key components. It's like, one, really understanding what metrics are and who's accountable to what is huge. And also, I think you touched on another point too. That even kind of goes back a little bit to the, before the patient life cycle altogether, but having your staff involved and empowered and understanding their actual role. Because a lot of the time people just see themselves as the admin. They're not going to put in as much. If they're just punching the clock and making $15 an hour, and they're not seeing it as a contributing factor to the business, and they're not a key role. Because a lot of clinics that I've been in, that I've worked with, it's kind of like the dumpster role. You don't want to do it, send it to the front desk. And then what happens? High attrition. Like, people just leave because they're not appreciated. So if you can, make it part of their understanding. For me, I always bonused percentage wise on numbers. So like, you say, okay, well, we had this retention, our NPS, we won't get into that, but like different metrics that the front desk hit. Hey, they're responsible for this. They're empowered to be able to hit those goals. And I want to hear about how we can do better. And we bonus them based on that so they can make more money. And they're actually a dynamic part. So I think it's a really, really big component. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you cannot bonus. I'm glad you brought that up. You can't bonus a front desk without understanding their role in the bigger picture. I was just currently working with a very large practice, and they took me through their bonus structure for front desk providers in their billing team, and there couldn't have been more of a disconnect between the bonuses. So it was all over the board. So there was no connection to anything bigger. So what happened? Everybody was always out for themselves, right? It was like getting people scheduled. I'm like, that doesn't matter. It's arrived. It's completed plans of care. It's NPS score, right? And the front desk metrics didn't align with the provider metrics. I was like, you got to be working towards a bigger thing. So in my world, the metrics we bonus on are ones that will impact a completed plan of care, right? And so to me, it's simple enough, and I make sure they're all connected together. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's really important. I want everybody listening to understand something else too. We're about 45 minutes in, is this isn't a lot of work, right? It isn't a lot of work. You really don't. I've made huge, meaning you can too. I've made huge impact by rolling into clinics and just changing the front desk process.
And now, mind you, a couple of weeks, like that can be, you can get almost a couple.
Well, and this is the beauty, right? And I'm just going to say this. I do a 4-week No, sorry, do a 4-month front desk training program, right? I always tell everybody, by the way, if you're not making back pretty much the whole cost within 60 days, let me know because I may owe you your money back. Right. So that's it. Right, Brad. They should be that's why I constantly look at my pricing and I'm like, I got to raise my prices. And that's what I want everybody else to understand here is that when you look at your front desk, my front desk in my company knew the financial hit that the company took if that person's scheduled or not. Everybody in my company knew the value of a new patient, knew the value of a patient walking in for their third visit. And I think it's really important. If you put patients first, which I do, because you can't have patient success without business success. So no one can tell me I'm chasing the dollar. If everybody understands that, then you can, if you avoid the money talk, then you're making it voodoo. You're making it bad. You're making it, ooh, we can't talk about that. If you won't call it selling, well, guess what? Selling actually helps patients get better. So if we don't want to call it that, we're actually making our jobs harder and our employees' jobs harder. So we have to allow these people to understand their role and then be successful and then reward them appropriately. And we cannot reward them and we cannot do that appropriately unless we understand this life cycle and what their role is in the company and what is this big metric we're working towards. That's why I think people get so caught up on, I need more new patients, because the only business metric they have that's larger than anything else is new patients. And really, so what, right? How leaky is your funnel? I just started with them on Monday. I spent a month talking them out of the fact that we were going to do any work on getting them more new patients. Their conversion rate was about 50% from lead to arrival. I said, you got to bear with me here, man. And if you truly believe it's a marketing issue, then I can't help you. But I was like, we got to stop put more people into the top of the funnel until you find out where those other 50% are going. And that's your sales process. So this isn't a lot of work. It's at one place. The providers will deliver. Put someone in front of the provider that should be there and watch how better your providers do and how much happier they are. And by the way, they'll hit their bonus numbers because your front desk is putting better people in front of them. Or I should say better prepared. Expectations managed and set, that trust trajectory. So this isn't a lot of work. This is the place to invest your time, money, and energy, because the ROI, I brought this up a few times, the ROI is going to be insane.
Yeah, it's exponential. And that's one question I always ask people is, what do you have a system and strategy for retention? Do you have a system and strategy for referrals? And, we know that we hear this all the time. It's like up to 5 times more expensive to acquire a new patient. So, if I get 10 patients, let's say in a month, and you get 10 patients, but you now, have everyone show up, or, whatever, let's say eight out of the 10 show up, and me, I have 5 of the 10, you automatically actually are more profitable. Now, if you have a referral strategy and a reactivation strategy, now all of a sudden, let's say you got 15 people, half of the 10 gave new patients gave you referrals. Your cost per acquisition is decreased. Your marketing budget is actually more bang for your buck, and you're actually going to be significantly more profitable with less. So, going back to Jay Abraham wrote a book called...
Well, stop. People need to run that back and listen to that again and write that down. That is so important, what Brad just said. And I'm not going to repeat it. Just run it back.
They can hit the replay.
That's what I'm saying. And listen to, just run it back to where Brad started sharing that. And I want you to write out a graphic for that, because I did that recently. The impact, you need to understand the impact of what Brad said. When it went up to 15 and 10 of those people are word of mouth, your costs are going through the floor.
Well, you win, because, Dan Kennedy, he always talks about, whoever can spend the most amount of money to acquire a client wins. Well, if you can spend more money because you're getting referrals and you're maximizing your opportunities and being efficient, you're getting more from everything you got. And that's kind of that Jay Abraham book where they really tie into. It's like, how can I get more from where I am? And that's part of the reason I wanted to, bring you on, to be able to get people to just think differently about a lot of the things that we do. Yeah, I help people get new patients and setting up systems and automate, but I also, I look at, if you can get 10, 20 new patients in a month and they come in and they do full plans of care where they're getting not just 1 or 2 appointments, but they're doing 10, 12, they're referring people. You don't need that many people. You don't need to spend a ton of money on advertising. And everyone really is actually happier in their roles. So I think it's a really, really big component to that. Just really being able to get that mindset changed and saying, where do I need to invest my time? Because as business owners, part of growing your business is tracking metrics and knowing what metrics are important and what ones are not. So if your drop-off rate is super high, like you are basically dying a slow death, because at one point you're going to hit a saturation point where you can't spend more money and your profit margins are going to evaporate. And chances are you don't have the structure. So when something goes wrong, like COVID, you're going to get completely blown out of the water. So these things are really, really important. If you retain your clients, chances, and you have good relationships, they're gonna be more open to trying virtual therapy or other stuff. And we've seen this through, our kind of practices and clients we work with, as opposed to other people who were not necessarily prepared. And unfortunately, a lot of people went out of business, or, are suffering very heavily because of that process.
I think people need to process that too, right there, Brad. You've seen, we agree on a lot of stuff. And it's so funny. I had that conversation this morning with the business owner who I'm going to help with her first front desk hire. She took 0 hit during COVID. And I said, you know why? And she said a couple things. I said, no, your people trusted you, right? So I think people really need to understand that the lesson to be learned during COVID, and I said this very early on, the lesson to be learned during COVID is you should have been doing this stuff before COVID. And it is what it is. And I'm not saying it to make you feel bad. I'm just saying it's proving itself out, right? The majority of my clients, my customers, took a hit, but they took a far lesser hit, and they are now busier than they were. I got one guy coming out of it. He's hiring staff right now, right? He had to close down completely for a little bit, but as soon, and people were reaching out to him the day he opened his doors, everybody showed back up, and he's hiring new staff now. So the trust that is built, especially now, this is what's funny is before COVID, people didn't know how to measure trust. They weren't looking for trust. The day COVID hit was the ultimate trust test. Where the fuck is everybody? Who's scheduling telehealth? Who's answering your phone calls? Right? Who's back in the clinic today? So COVID gave you the litmus test, the trust test, the canary in the coal mine that you wouldn't acknowledge pre-COVID. So this trust thing is what's going to grow your company. This trust thing is what's going to make, Brad said this too, is going to make your employees' lives easier. And ultimately your patients will be happier. And guess what? When your patients are happy, they spend their money with you.
For sure. And they get better.
By the way, that's every company on this wall. So I'm not making this up. Brad and I both learned it. I'm going to tell you right now, Brad and I both learned it from the same place. Neither one of us discovered this. We learned it from the same place and we both applied it.
And that's a big thing, is applying. So, with what we learned today, like with what you've shared, it's really, going back and thinking, what is the actual patient life cycle? Like, what metrics are important to my business? Is my front desk, what are they responsible for? And really kind of going back. So I really encourage anyone listening to this who's got that front desk, or even if you don't have front desk, you can still automate some of this aspect, and you can have kind of like a pseudo front desk or utilize technology to be able to bridge that gap until you grow to a specific point, if that's your goal of getting it. And Jerry and I were talking a little bit before this call about a new kind of service that he's got with front desk and kind of remote based, that I think might be a really good advantage for people who, are kind of struggling with that, both from if you got staff right now that you want expertly trained in getting these things implemented so you can retain clients and get more people on the schedule and obviously grow your business. And he can help you with that, obviously. And I know now he's got a new program that he's looking at launching with front desk. So maybe walk us through a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I've wanted to do this for a long time, and COVID allowed me to finally get this off the ground, and maybe not for the reasons you're thinking. The hardest part of creating my virtual front desk sales systems, of which a virtual front desk sales associate is part of, was getting the right people in the pipeline to hire, right? You all know, everybody watching this knows the hardest part is hiring. Well, unfortunately, COVID has created a lot of people looking for work. The good news is I believe most of the people that we bring on with the way we've structured this are going to do better in our company than probably where they were before. That's what we're finding out pretty quickly. So I get to feel good about hiring people and do something that is going to be bigger and better than what they were doing before. So it's called the virtual front desk sales systems. And we hire the voice of that company for you. So, and we have, it's all in there. I don't want to go too deep, but this is the person that's going to call and get people on the schedule who will arrive, pay, stay, and do your marketing with you. They'll manage that that phase 2 sales process. They'll email, they'll send videos, they'll do follow-up calls. But most importantly, they'll answer the inbound calls. They will eventually do outbound stuff but for right now, the training is all focused on inbound. And the beauty is they all have sales training. So I don't have to try to train non-sales people in sales. They come with the sales training, and then I run them through my front desk success training program, an abbreviated version because they don't need all of it. We do some onboarding with your business, and then we're ready to go. And I'm really excited. This is not a call center. It's not a switchboard. So if Brad needed somebody, he gets one person. We want this person to be considered your employee. We want them to be part of your team, right? So this is new and exciting. By the way, Brad, I was going to tell if anybody wants that checklist I was talking about, that 10-point checklist, I've got a real detailed version on my website. Yes, you will have to leave your email. It's the 10 steps to a successful new patient phone call on my website. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's worth going in there, getting it. And then if you don't like the first couple of emails you get from me, just unsubscribe. But the 10-point checklist, what I did was I took my 10-point checklist and said, here are the 10 things you need to do on the first phone call. I used to just give people the checklist. So like collect their goals. Now I created a form where I actually write out why and how to do it under each one. So there is pretty significant value in that checklist. And all I want is your email. And I'm hoping, all my emails, I'm going to tell you, I love transparency. All my emails are about front desk shit. And so, yes, I will try to sell you some front desk services. But over the last 2 weeks, I've sent out like 6 or 7 of my documents, articles, videos on how to do shit on your own. So yes, you will get sold, and yes, you will get a ton of value out of it. So on my website, it's clientexperiencecompany.com.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the chat below or wherever this is going. Like chat
10 steps to a new patient phone call, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be worth your time and energy. And because there is no money, it'll be worth your time and energy. Download. By the way, it's funny. I created this website a while ago, and I forgot I put this together. And the other day, I pulled it off to share it with someone else, and I opened it up, and I went, "Oh, holy shit! I forgot I had done all this work for this thing. I thought it was just the bulleted 10-point checklist. It's a damn good document."
Awesome. I'll put it below so everyone can grab that.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a ton of stuff. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to add or fill in just before we sign off?
Brad said this also. I love how Brad and I align on this, and I'm not going to lie. And, again, we've really connected over the last 3 or 4 months. And so it's nice to find people that can prove your beliefs. I'll leave it at that. There appears to be in healthcare that people look at like one solution. I need to find that one person to help me, right? I need to find the person who's going to help me in my whole business. They're going to help me with my marketing, with my sales, with my retention, with my clinical stuff, with my billing. That person does not exist. They don't exist. And what Brad has found and what I have found and every successful business has found is you need experts in each thing. I do zero marketing. I don't do marketing. I train salespeople, how to work closely with marketing. I trained salespeople on how to gather marketing data to give back to the marketing team that they work closely with. I do know marketing, but again, I help marketing. The sales stuff I do also feeds into the retention side. Okay. But I don't deal with the retention side. I deal with the sales process. And what I found is every time I try to expand out a little bit, I don't do as well. So what I found, again, is that the smart people hire smart people to do marketing, smart people to do sales, and smart people to do retention. And probably those people should know each other and work together to some degree and be of the same mindset. So my last thing is, as you're looking at how to expand your business, as you're looking at how to grow your business, the lowest hanging fruit is not marketing. It's the person sitting at your front desk. And if you're going to invest any time, money, or energy right now, because you have some downtime, invest it in your front desk, not your marketing program. Sorry, marketing is not the low hanging fruit. By the way, the fact that there are 80 people in your Facebook feed pitching you marketing right now should tell you how fucking easy it is. Where are all the salespeople? It's not easy. There's not a lot of sales and retention side in your Facebook feed, right?
Not as sexy.
Yeah, it's not as sexy. And I'm going to tell you, it's work, but the ROI is far greater than anything you can do. And I'll argue the sales feeds into the retention. Yes, I'm biased, but I believe I can prove it to you. And if you want, let's jump on a call and I'll show you how better sell. Brad already told you, and I didn't tip him off. Brad told you how a great sales process and retention process leads into almost, if you were really good, you could eliminate your marketing. Now, I would never do that because you want brand awareness, but Brad already took you through that. So the sales process feeds the retention process and also makes your marketing better. That is the biggest ROI for your dollar. So that's my takeaway. And whether it's me or not, you'd be foolish not to use me because there's nobody in Canada. Nope. There's nobody in Canada or the States who has done the work I have on the front desk. Remembering that I work the front desk, right? I answered the incoming new calls. I work the front desk. And yes, I'm pitching and I'm selling because there is just nobody out there who understands the front desk view as much as I have. And I did it for survival. And I'm going to show you how to do it just to fucking add zeros onto your bottom line. That's my last 2 cents, Brad.
Love it. Yeah, it's huge. So thanks for coming on, Jerry. I really appreciate you sharing everything and giving some tips. I'm going to put the checklist in the chat below. Let people know how they can get in contact with you if they want to learn more about what it is that you do or getting their front desk set up and whatnot.
Yeah, I am. By the way, I'll tell you what I'll do. I love doing this. I'll give you my cell phone and I ask you to text me. And it's my cell phone. It's not some funky, it's not a marketing ploy. It's literally my cell number. It's 415-509-3986. If you text me and say, hey, I heard you in your conversation with Brad, you will hear back from me probably within 15 minutes, guaranteed. So that's the quickest way to get a hold of me. If you just want to kind of saunter into my world and learn a little more about me, go to my website, clientexperiencecompany.com, and download that 10 steps to a successful new patient call. You'll get some of my emails and you can see if maybe I'm someone you want to talk to a little more. I think you got both extremes. You can either, kind of come in and say, hey, I'm not ready to go on a date yet, Jerry, or you can text me and say, hey, I want to talk about this front desk stuff. I love this stuff. I work like I said, I've been up in Canada. It applies in Canada. It applies in the States. It applies in Australia. I talked to a physio in freaking Nigeria the other day. He reached out to me. Hey, I have some questions about my front desk. And I was like, oh my God, it doesn't matter. It's all the same.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I definitely think we got a ton of value from this. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. It's great to do this with someone like you, Brad, because we both come from completely different backgrounds. We both have created things, but with the same, this is what I preach all the time. Business is not gray. Business is black and white. And there is a structure for successful business. And Brad described it earlier, right? And it's the marketing, the sales, and how all this works together. There is no gray in that. Now, the way your practice model, is it going to be one-on-one? There's a lot of gray, right? There's all this stuff, but your marketing systems, there's no gray. Your sales systems, there's no gray, right? How you structure all this and build this is black and white. And that's what I love about Brad, is being able to sit down with someone who understands that part. Because we just, you should see our Facebook Messenger conversation from yesterday, right? Because he kept going back and forth and didn't want to use the word sales. He kept using other words. I said, well, that's sales. So we don't agree on everything, but what you guys really heard today, this wasn't scripted. And it's really cool to be able to get in a conversation, because I believe ultimately the people listening and watching this right now are going to get an insane amount of value, because we agree on the foundational work, and that's what's important.
Of course. Thanks so much.